In the near future, a groundbreaking device will be created that reveals the exact moment one will meet their soulmate. It is heralded as the next major advancement in digital matchmaking by many. A company known as The Timer offers this service to the public. They insert the device into your wrist that counts down to the day you encounter your soulmate. When two soulmates come within close proximity, the timer starts beeping, signaling that they have met. However, the timer won't activate until both individuals have had the device implanted in their wrists. The device quickly becomes a massive hit, and soon most of society has one. Regardless, many people still refuse to get it because they don't want fate to be decided for them. In Los Angeles, an orthodontist named Una has a timer that hasn't been activated yet, which means her soulmate doesn't have one. After just a month of dating her current boyfriend, Brian, she persuades him to get a timer too and takes him to the timer company. Brian is visibly anxious before entering because if their timers don't align, they will have to part ways. Everyone knows Una there because she is a recurring customer who brings every one of her boyfriends to ensure they're the one before continuing the relationship. After a matchmaker has him sign a sketchy document, Brian gets the timer implanted and it immediately activates, showing he has 2.5 years left to find his soulmate. Much to her dismay, Una checks her own timer and sees it is still off. On the other hand, Brian is thrilled about meeting his soulmate, as it will be right after he finishes his doctorate and possibly has a tenure. After discovering they are not meant for each other, they break up. Meanwhile, Una's stepsister and roommate, Steph, continues to have numerous one-night stands with various men whose timers will run out soon. As her timer indicates she will meet her soulmate in over 15 years. She often tells Una to enjoy life until her soulmate arrives, but Una refuses to be with anyone without certainty. One day, Una is at a grocery store when the cashier, Mikey, flirts with her. Una is flattered but notices his timer already has a date, meaning he's not her soulmate. Mikey notices her timer too, and suggests they could still hook up since they have a long wait ahead of them, but Una declines. That night, the sisters go to their parents' house. Their younger brother Jesse is finally old enough to get his own timer, and a matchmaker is invited to perform the procedure at home. As soon as Jesse gets the implant, it activates and shows he will meet his soulmate in 3 days. The whole family is thrilled and congratulates him, but Una can't help but think it's unfair. When she realizes she's dampening the mood, she congratulates Jesse too, and leaves without having dinner. Exhausted and frustrated with her situation, Una returns to the grocery store and, after some hesitation, asks Mikey to spend the night with her. Mikey agrees immediately, and after telling his coworker to cover for him, he leaves with Una in her car. It's an awkward drive, as they don't know each other well, and Una begins to second-guess her decision when they arrive at Mikey's place, because the 4 roommates and the mess in the room make her more aware of his youth. She considers leaving, but Mikey insists it's fine before they share a kiss. It's a pleasant moment, but when she sees his timer has only 4 months left, Una feels guilty and apologizes to Mikey before leaving. The next day, Una is surprised to find her latest patient is Mikey, who sought her out because she's the only orthodontist with that surname. He really wants to continue their night, so he reveals he's a drummer in a band, not just a cashier. Mikey also says that the timer shows the end goal, but life is about detours. However, Una remains uninterested and believes getting intimate with him would be like cheating on his future soulmate. In the evening, Una goes on a blind date, but the guy is incredibly dull and only responds to her questions. So, Una decides to cut the date short and heads to the club where Steph works as a bartender. To her surprise, Mikey's band is performing there, and seeing him play ignites something in Una. They make eye contact and create so much tension that after the gig, Una goes to Mikey's home to finally get intimate. As they're about to start, they hear Mikey's roommates arrive and make a lot of noise, so Mikey goes out to tell them to quiet down, explaining how amazing Una is and how she's way out of his league. Una hears this and is deeply flattered. Afterward, Mikey plays some music to cover the noise and gets to work with her. The next day, Steph is at her day job as a receptionist when a man named Dan arrives. She finds him very attractive and starts flirting with him, but drops him immediately when she notices he doesn't have a timer. Later at home, Steph finds out Una finally had a fling and congratulates her, but also advises against seeing Mikey again, as it likely won't end well. Sometime later, Una's parents are very excited because today is the day Jesse's timer reaches 0, meaning he should meet his soulmate. However, he spends his whole day at school normally without any reaction. When Jesse returns home, The cleaning lady, Los, introduces them to her husband and daughter, Soledad. At that moment, both Soledad and Jesse's timers start beeping. As it turns out, Jesse and Soledad are soulmates. While the teenagers awkwardly look at each other, Jesse's mother is very excited and wants to start planning everything, but Luz feels uncomfortable and immediately leaves with her family. In the evening, Una is leaving her office when she is startled from behind by Mikey and ends up hitting him in the face. She quickly composes herself, and Mikey insists on spending more time with her, and she agrees to take him to her place. After another wonderful night together, Una realizes how much she likes Mikey, and they start spending lots of time together. Una even bonds with Mikey's roommates, finding them more enjoyable than she expected. Una shares with Mikey that her biological father is a music producer, with whom she has not spoken since he and her mother separated. One day at work, Steph's boss reprimands her for not answering the phone, but fortunately, Dan intervenes and helps her out of the predicament. After the boss leaves, Dan shows clear interest in Steph, who isn't attracted to him. However, she thinks he might be a good match for Una, so she invites him to visit her at the club that evening. Later, Steph invites Una as well, noting she hasn't been out much recently. Una feels guilty, but doesn't mention Mikey, knowing Steph will disapprove. That night, Una decides to hang out with Mikey, so Dan spends the evening chatting with Steph. They quickly connect and spend most of the night sharing details about their lives. Dan explains his wife passed away 3 years ago, and he believes she was the one, so he has no interest in the timer. By the end of the night, Steph realizes she is developing a crush on him. When Steph returns home, she remains upset with Una for standing up. At that moment, she sees Mikey in Una's room and realizes they've been secretly dating. An argument erupts about Mikey's timer and the possibility of a soulmate showing up soon. Prompting Mikey to interrupt and reveal his timer is a fake. It's just a sticker that he removes, explaining he only used it to feel included and admits he doesn't believe in the timer's efficacy. Una is shocked and hurt by the deception, so she kicks Mikey out. As time goes by, Una can't stop thinking about Mikey. She realizes that their relationship, which developed naturally, allowed her to be herself and enjoy their time together without worrying about legitimacy or the future. Eventually, she decides to reach out to him again, and they talk things through, rekindling their relationship. When Thanksgiving arrives, Una decides to bring Mikey as her date. Luz and her family also join with dishes from their homeland, hoping to unite both families. The teenagers still feel awkward, but Mikey, who speaks Spanish, helps bridge the gap between the groups. Una's parents ask many questions of Mikey, but Una answers on his behalf, worried that anything he says might be judged. After dinner, Una's mother expresses her approval of Mikey, but worries about potential heartbreak if Una's soulmate eventually appears. Meanwhile, Dan and Steph begin a secret, casual relationship. Later, Mikey tells Una he loves her, causing her to panic and flee. Seeking serious advice, Una visits her biological father, Rick, with Steph accompanying her for support. Initially, the visit is very awkward, but Una breaks the ice by sharing a disc of Mikey's music for Rick to listen to. She then asks him why he never got a timer, only to be shocked when Rick reveals he does have one. This means her mother lied about their divorce being due to Rick's refusal to get a timer. Rick still has time before meeting his soulmate, but prefers to enjoy life and real emotions. As the sisters are about to leave, they discover Rick's much younger girlfriend had her timer removed because she loves Rick and values her feelings over the timer's predictions. Inspired, the sisters rush to the timer company to get their timers removed. Seeking to live more spontaneously, the matchmaker staff warns them that once removed, the timer cannot be reimplanted, making it their last chance to find the one. Steph doesn't hesitate and immediately gets her timer removed, feeling relieved. However, when it's Una's turn, she hesitates, and just then, her timer activates, indicating her soulmate has finally gotten his own. With only 5 hours left until the meeting, Una decides to keep her timer out of curiosity, but Steph is angry and feels betrayed. Later, the sisters go to their parents' home to celebrate their shared birthday. While their parents socialize, Jesse approaches Soledad and reveals he's learned a bit of Spanish for her. Without the pressure of their families, the teens finally connect on their own terms. Mikey is also invited and helps translate between Los and Una's mother, who chooses to maintain a professional relationship and let the teens handle their own issues. Meanwhile, Steph is happily spending time with Dan, who was also invited. At that moment, Una runs into him, and their timers start beeping, revealing they are soulmates. Steph is immediately upset and rushes to the kitchen, while an angry Mikey leaves the party. Dan follows Steph, trying to comfort her, but is interrupted by Una. Another argument ensues as Steph feels she's going to lose the best thing that ever happened to her, accusing Una of always taking things from her. Una insists that Steph is her best friend, and that nothing, not even her soulmate, is worth losing her. Una then leaves, and Dan tells Steph he only got the timer for her, that he doesn't care about Una, and that he genuinely likes her. The next day, Una visits Mikey and shows him she had her timer removed and says she doesn't care about the results. Mikey is grateful for the gesture but insists that the results matter, saying he can tell she isn't in love with him, and that he's just a safe choice. So, they say goodbye. The next morning, Una visits Steph. After a heartfelt conversation, the sisters reconcile. Sometime later, Una goes for a run at the track, later than she usually does, and runs into Dan practicing with his relay team, learning they use the same track, but at different times. They go their separate ways with the promise of meeting again as the movie concludes.